So indeed, what I will try to do through the course of the next 25 minutes is give you a bit of a deep dive, a bit of an introduction. How much you can do a deep dive for 25 minutes is questionable, though I will try to give you an update, a perspective on what is currently happening in the financial space, in particular in insurance, as we have entered a completely new era, a new era of popularization, democratization of a technology, which is gradually starting to continuously redesign, redevelop business models and effectively starting to create transformative forces which will have a huge impact on the way we do business. And whether you like it or not, the insurance sector will not be immune from it. And that's exactly what we will talk about. So I've divided the session into like 3 parts. First of all, I will give you a bit of an introduction. Daniela mentioned to me that maybe not everyone is fully aware what's happening within the AI space. So at first, I will give you a bit of an introduction, what's happening within AI and what are we now currently talking about. Then I will try to make it a bit more contextual within the insurance space and talk about both what already has been implemented and what are the near and longer term perspectives for change within your industry. And last but not least, I will give you an introduction into what I believe you as CIOs, but not only, what this technology is doing, it is elevating the interest up to the C level. So from a C level perspective, what are the recommendations to implement in order to really live up and create a future-proof strategy, which is the essence of what I will talk about. So without further ado, let me kick it off by moving the slides, which are not moving. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so first of all, let's peg ourselves where we are today. I want to break the perception that we live in the age of computers. We no longer live in the age of computers. And by the way, we haven't lived in the age of computers for over 50 years now. We've been gradually advancing within a phase which is called the age of intelligence. And I think what you guys are witnessing now within, the development of not only AI, but a part of AI, which is generative AI, is turbocharged age of intelligence. And this is very important to understand, because one big differentiator between what many of us consider as the age of computing versus the age of intelligence is the age of intelligence is all about intelligent machines helping humans to take informed decisions and based on that adjust business models. Technology on its own no longer is a competitive advantage. It is a commodity. It is the way you use technology to harness the power of data, of information, that builds a solid competitive advantage. And with the introduction of AI, that has even further enhanced and exemplified. Therefore, for the simplicity in this room, so that we all operate within the same boundaries, when we talk about AI, we effectively talk about a function, a feature, a functionality, something which starts to have an interlink between art and science. Art and science are underlined, where machines are starting to perform cognitive functions that historically were only reserved for the human brain. Effectively, we are witnessing an area where machines are starting to gain humankind powers. And don't be fooled by the fact that this is an old concept. I just want to underline, you don't need to read the slide, but what this slide shows you is that AI has been present with us since effectively the 50s, yeah? And it has transformed, it has evolved from being a supporter for machine, for relatively easy production processes, then advanced more into machine learning, and suddenly moved more into the deep learning space. The deep learning, I'm sure you're familiar. We had examples of, chess games being played by a machine versus a person. And you've noticed that through the years that has advanced to a point where a machine was able to win a chess match with one of the best players in the world. But this wasn't enough. This hasn't really built momentum. We knew this was happening, but up until literally a few months back, a game changer arrived, a game changer which has completely revolutionized the way the mass market look at AI, and finally has captured the attention, if not to say the innovative spirit of the wider community. And that was the introduction of generative AI. Introduction is not the right word to put it. It was the launch. It was effectively showcasing, because I'm sure you are aware that generative AI models have already been developed and have already been established for the course of the last 5 to 7 years. But what happened is, with the launch of OpenAI, with OpenAI's ChatGPT model, this was the first time where the public finally noticed the power of natural language processing, of deep learning, of computer vision and a system which is able to, on a mass scale, ease us as humans in undertaking tedious, difficult, sometimes very creative tasks. And this was a revolution, and I'm not concerned to use that word. Democratization of technology is we are witnessing again a technology being democratized at an extremely fast pace. To put it into the context, you know, when you look at Spotify, it took Spotify to reach 1 million users in around 1 year. It took OpenAI to reach 1 million users in 5 days. It took OpenAI 150 days to build 10 million users. It's unprecedented. We never had a technology that was scaling, that was democratizing at such a pace. That is why we are now at a point where there is no going back. This technology has taken the public by the storm, and the public was effectively, you know, enchanted by a technology that in many cases has already been implemented or is currently being implemented within the B2B space. And effectively, what I want to showcase to you is how the B2B space, in particular financial markets, will need to embark on this revolution, and some of them already are quite advanced. Yeah, hyper democratization, this is the name of the game. Yeah, we are now witnessing a technology which, through the use of algorithms, through the use of automation, and an extremely cost-effective model. Remember that today, using OpenAI, ChatGPT, you are able to perform tasks which even 1 year ago were reserved only for supercomputers, high velocity hardware, and very advanced software. That's the power, hence the term of democratization. The public was the first, consumers were the first, now businesses will follow. Now businesses will follow. Remember that these systems are open API systems, so there is a free connection to them. Hence, the pace of adoption and hype will only continue to accelerate. What this even further underlines is that we live in the time of data. And one of the reasons why generative AI was able to flourish as quickly as it has and actually build such a robust model of solutioning is because it actually finally started to extract the large pools of data that we had available. A big problem our economy had was that we were producing a lot of data. We were producing a lot of information as businesses, as social, as governments, as humans. We didn't really have an ability to really use and leverage that data, except for really on I would say, impressive ways, like, I don't know, pulling together a very basic analysis of like data facts. What this technology has actually done is has shown us finally and ultimately what a lot of the futurists were talking about, that data is the new oil, data is the new currency of the world. Yeah. And now if you add on that currency a system that is able to harness it, that is able to extract it, you gain an ultimate superpower. And that superpower is something that businesses more and more widely will start to introduce. And I need to stress, and this is important for this forum, is that, you know, there are extremely high opportunities both for banking and insurance embedded in this technology. From a generative AI perspective, we are only now seeing the beginning of a bigger trend. If you go to the US, recently had a chance to spend a bit of time in New York and meet with top tier banks, you know, like global banks. These guys no longer consider artificial intelligence, in particular generative AI, as a hype. They consider it as a clearly defined amendment to their business model, which will start to be which has started to be implemented from day one. Second very important takeaway is that they are seeing it, they are comparing, a lot of people in technology are comparing the invention of generative AI to the invention of the personal computer. Why? They're not comparing it to the invention of the internet. They are comparing it to the invention of the personal computer. Why? Because the personal computer was a device that you were able to upload different utility functions around software, which were leverageable for a lot different use cases, from software to automation, production, to social, a lot of things. Same thing with generative AI. The ability to use this technology is extremely wide. Therefore, within even the world of finance, these use cases will only appear and will only magnify as things evolve. And last but not least, what I think, you know, has been also proven is that there is a very interesting development in the way OpenAI has changed the perception of the consumer. A lot of the big tech companies have built their power by an ad-based model. What that means is, you guys all know it, yeah, when you are looking something up on Facebook, well, you have the feeling that you don't pay for Facebook, but end of the day, it's not you that pays, it is the advertiser that pays Facebook in order to present you with information which is so-called, you know, tailored. It's not tailored. Someone is selling you information and is effectively advertising to you. What OpenAI has broken with ChatGPT is that they've introduced a system where the user pays for a platform which is free of advertising, yeah, and like realize the power of that, like, and realize what I said earlier with the high adoption rate. So effectively, we have the first scalable technology that has broken the ad-based model and has converted the consumer to a client taking a decision to pay, and in exchange expecting a no ad contaminated environment. This is a big change, and I really want to underline it because this is the first time in the history of technology in the last 50 years where there is actually potential to break through the monopolies that have been established by the ad-based companies. Yeah, and these ad-based companies started to be more and more active in financial service. You guys, I'm sure you are aware of all of the experiments that are being done by Facebook, by Google to enter into that space slowly but surely. And I think this technology and the model of, you know, giving consumers the willingness to actually pay for not getting ads is quite a revolutionary thing, which a lot of the technology people are extremely inspired by. So moving forward, I think, you know, what is very important for us to understand that this is a process. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Don't expect that generative AI will be introduced into your business models tomorrow. Yet why? Because things need to be adjusted, and also regulated industries have functionalities which cannot be one-to-one transformed into this new environment. B, not all consumers, not to mention businesses, are ready for the revolution. Therefore, what is extremely important to underline is that this is a process when contemplating to introduce generative AI, and later I will say why I think it is essential. One needs to plan it, and one needs to roadmap it. So I think, you know, first of all, what we need to be aware of is that this is a technology which already actually is advanced and in progress. Yeah. And if you look at AI without even the generative component within process automation and financial services, this is something that a lot of us are already involved in. Yeah. If not, well, you're probably missing a train, because that's the future of technology. For not only technology, that's the future of business models for the financial services industry, where you are automating more and more processes, hence the development of business process outsourcing centers, call centers, IT support models, KYC, AML, compliance type of RegTech solutions. So effectively, don't be tricked by the fact that this is a new technology. It's not a new technology per se. Many of these features already are embedded. And if they're not yet embedded, definitely have a look at them, because a lot of financial institutions are very advanced in putting them into space. Why? Because by definition, AI, as I said, as a artificial feature of trying to remodel what a human brain does, is extremely good at automating tedious processes and workflows. Yeah. So within the process automation space, this, let's consider it's done, it's tackled, it's already in progress. An area which is currently at the brink of being disrupted, and watch my words, it's a matter of a few months when this will hit mainstream with the largest insurance. And though I do agree what was mentioned by the colleague, that insurance by definition was quite slow historically to adopt new technologies, mostly because of the conservative business model, B, because of economical situation that has provided the industry with a very profitable outlook and very profitable results, and last but not least, with regulatory pressures to disrupt the industry. But these are the three areas that will go first. Yeah. Why? Because generative AI is extremely good for text-heavy process automation. So if you have a lot of data with a lot of information, when there's a lot of text, and effectively you are able to bring these data sets together, like within the claim and policy management model, where claims are all about obtaining data, managing the data, being able to distill through the data, being able to do scenarios, being able to, on top of that, automate and reduce workflows. That is an ideal place where generative AI will thrive. This is a natural place where this technology will very quickly show meaningful input. Policy, exactly the same. By the whole model of issuing and managing policies, it's all based on data that's usually present within the ecosystem of the insurance company, despite some of the limitations, and we'll talk about them shortly. Then risk assessment. By definition, risk, the overall risk management model was, overall in the industry was very old school. It was a model mostly based on labor, on manual labor, and people, effectively digesting information and based on that taking decisions. Generative AI is extremely good at assessing, predicting, analyzing, and identifying, potential situations that are I would say maybe using fraud is a bit of a harsh word, but identifying anomalies which then go further for a human to take an opinion on. So within the risk space, again, this is an area where generative AI will very shortly significantly increase its plausibility, decrease costs, and decrease time needed to process different type of actions. And then last but not least, customers. It was mentioned by my predecessor here at the event that, and it's actually funny that it's being said that insurance is entering a client-centric model. Well, kind of late, if that's really the statement, because the client-centric model has been with us for a long time. And client-centric model is, again, all about personalized data, approaching clients and effectively building models that allow retention, that allow cross-sell, that allow an ability. Finally, we will have an ability to customize products for individuals, products for communities. I've recently looked at a startup which is using generative AI, which has developed a policy that us as individuals can purchase when we go on holiday, and they've plugged it into the weather forecast. And for every day where we don't have sunshine, they will pay us a claim based on the conditions of the policy that they issue. So effectively, they've combined generative AI with prediction and effectively, mapped the risk of different areas of the world against a weather map, and effectively being able to offer us as consumers. Think about energy, think about the energy sector and how that will potentially revolutionize insurance for example, solar power plants, where you will be able to insure your solar power plant against days where there is no sun, all thanks to using, products that are based on a large set of databases, including very complex variables across weather, across different type of conditions that up till now were very difficult to comprehend on a human level. So this is in the waiting. It's already in the waiting room, and this will happen in the course of from a customer perspective, we will be able to approach customers in a completely new fashion, in a completely new way. Chatbots will look as if they are obsolete. If you compare the power of Alexa, which was one of the most advanced chatbots in the world, with the power of the current generative AI models, it's like comparing, I don't know, like a hammer to a electric screwdriver. Yeah, it's massive. So watch that space. This is going to happen. And then there are a few activities, there are a few areas in the insurance space that will require a bit more time to be disrupted. Yeah. What is disrupting now is this pointer. But anyways, longer term to disrupt, there are a few activities, and these are the ones that I see from my vantage point, that will require more time. Core processes. Core processes for financial sector are, as the name implies, core. Therefore, they are not that easy to disrupt due to risk, due to the need to take on not only a data analytical function, but also a decisive function, a function where you are based on data, taking a decision, which then later has an impact on the balance sheet, on the reputation, and on your profitability. So for example, underwriting is a great example where the underlying data for underwriting will definitely be automated. Why? Because it is a relatively structured set of data, but then moving forward and generating scenarios, and effectively at the final stage, there is a human that needs to look at the more complex part of the equation. So the work of an underwriter is not under threat, but what the work of the underwriter will require is a significant evolution of his or her skill set in order to be able to take advantage and form opinions based on generative AI models. Complex risks, again, risk management, I mentioned, it's a natural thing, but if you have complex risks against, for example, different jurisdictions, different asset classes, different type of exposures, things that are more nuanced, things that require experience, things that require a bit of a more in-depth understanding, if not to call it intuition, That is where generative AI for now is not able to fully come up with a result that will be fully, I would say, fully compliant from a regulatory perspective. And last but not least, regulations. Overall, we operate in a highly regulated environment, and generative AI remains a bit of a black box. You're not able to really present to regulators how you came up with the decision, and that, until this changes, will remain an issue. Remember also that generative AI still is limited to handle structured transaction-based information. Why? Because of the whole notion of the way the model operates. Yeah, if it's transaction-based, it's usually quite detailed and it's usually contextual. What generative AI thrives is unstructured data sets. And like, don't be tricked. Researchers are working to address this issue, and it's going to probably take them one additional year, if not to say 18 months, because before this issue is solution. But for now, these are longer term things that you guys need to put on your radar as something which probably should be deprioritized, or actually put more into the mode of automation rather than full disruption. Going forward, how to implement AI. And I think this is an extremely important way of looking at the world, because this is, I mentioned, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. What the implementation of AI, in particular for a financial institution, requires is first and foremost a very clearly articulated AI strategy with prioritization of the use cases that you will want to implement. And in particular, what this requires is very strong buy-in from the C-level. This is a technology which suddenly goes directly to the C-suite rather than being only managed by the CIO or by the digital team. Why? Because its impact and its ability to really disrupt the business model is so crucial. It actually hits the agenda of the strategy rather than only the agenda of the digital model. And within that, within the clearly articulated AI strategy, definitely the data culture needs to be improved. Yeah, the insurance companies in particular are still heavy entities that were always very complacent in the way they manage data. Data was distributed within different systems, legacy systems, unstructured. So building a culture from foremost, effectively being able to first feed the data, first prepare the data, and avoid something which is called garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage into the system, you will get garbage out. That's the way these models are trained, by first of foremost migrating data and making sure that the data input is of highest quality. Then engage with both internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Very important. Listen to your customers, understand their needs, understand their business model, understand the way you currently operate. And within that, identify the areas which are easiest and I would say most impactful from a cost perspective to, at the first phase, implement using these type of solutions. Educate the workforce. That's an extremely important point. I think financial services were always a space where we needed to continuously educate. This has now only accelerated. Yeah, this new technology is bringing far more pressure on us to get up to speed and effectively understand what's happening. Implement agile models. It was mentioned before. I fully agree. Evolve and improve. Start with small things and only later contemplate bigger things. Invest in infrastructure, very important. Yeah, this requires servers, this requires memory, this requires a lot of hard assets that need to be put in place, because these things don't operate in a vacuum. Very important point are biases. Remember that generative AI has the tendency to hallucinate, has the tendency to sometimes come up with answers that are inaccurate. Being aware of that and managing it from day one is an extremely important feature of the strategy. And only then technology comes into play. Yeah, I'm on purpose putting technology as a lever, not the key determinator, going back to my point around age of intelligence and technology being a commodity rather than a competitive edge these days. So implementing AI is a process that effectively, to my understanding and to my perception, is now a crucial part of building the strategy. Technology is pivotal. I did mention that. And these are the type of technologies that one needs to look at. And I said, look at them not from a commodity perspective, but from them being part of your operating model and the cycle of development that you are investing in. Big data and data management. I mentioned that. Yeah, garbage in, garbage out. We want to avoid that. Cloud computing and storage. Generative AI loves models that are not based on on-prems. They love cloud models. Why? Because then it's very easy to aggregate information, and you can actually build hybrid work models that you combine on-prem with cloud. So investing in that is extremely important. Programming AI models, definitely I encourage, to more and more invest in people that have the capacity, that have the know-how to program internal AI models, of course, using APIs delivered by the big owners of the technology. Cybersecurity is an extremely important factor of generative AI. Generative AI today is one of the most weakest from a cyber protection parts of the technology ecosystem. Why? Because it is evolving at a very rapid pace. So there are loopholes in that model. So cybersecurity now even becomes a more pivotal and more important part of this equation. Integration and automation, I mentioned that, integrating different features, integrating hardware with software, workflows, and last but not least, an extremely important point, which a lot of people tend to avoid because it is where the pain starts. It is all about redesigning processes. You're not able to put this technology on a process which was created for an obsolete model. So it requires a complete redesign of processes, which makes these processes more efficient, more agile, and gives them an ability to really harness and take advantage of this AI revolution. There are challenges to implement, and I will very quickly skim through them in the interest of time. Well, first of all, regulations. We are all aware of that. Yeah, the space of regulation drives a lot of the limitations that we face. But also legacy systems. The insurance companies have a lot of legacy systems, and they are not connected. They are not effective. Not all of them are able to come up with a model that actually fits the needs of the model, the current environment. Hence, data availability becomes an issue. Security, I mentioned. Legal constraint, I mentioned. Think about IP rights. Who owns the rights to what is produced by generative AI? It still remains an open point. Bias, hallucinations, I mentioned that, and very important, mindsets. Our mindsets, I mean, our as a community, our as business people, sometimes lack the imagination of how the world needs to change for us to stay competitive. And we do have this tendency of preserving status quo. Generative AI and AI in general is definitely the opposite of preserving the status quo. So changing that mindset on all levels of the organization, starting from the top, is an extremely important part of the equation. Last but not least, partner across the cycle. There is effectively a cycle how this is implemented. And this is what we do. We've been in this business for over 30 years. We work with a lot of top-tier insurance companies that we support, not only with an AI, but with the full breadth of services related to digitalization. You see a few brands that we are, actively working and supporting on that front. And I wanted to show you the cycle because, again, this puts things into some kind of a perspective. You see infrastructure, like I mentioned, servers, backups, cloud, that all is needed in order for the software to operate on it. The software then translates into system solutions that are, are a derivative of a conversion between the software and the system that you use, the processes that you have. And last but not least, a redesign of the processes. So, effectively don't invent the wheel, like seriously. And I'm not talking this as a CEO of a technology group. I'm saying this as a person that, has seen a lot of these business models. A lot of this knowledge, a lot of this information is actually information that is shared by the tech scene. And this, again, is a great time where the insurance companies, where banks are should even more open themselves up to cooperation and partnership. So just to quickly summarize, start now. This is your last chance. This thing is accelerating. It's on fire. A lot of the big boys and girls are already using it. So start it. Don't ignore this trend. It will only get harder to jump on the train as the train will accelerate. Cost will increase, talent will be scarce, and your competitors will be ahead of you. Therefore, be very vigilant and start to identify use cases, even at smaller scales. Start to identify within your businesses, start to play with use cases. And that will start to effectively fuel the organization with attention, with willingness to experiment. Prioritize on C-level. I mentioned that on a few occasions. This is a C-level project. It's not a project that can be done by the head of IT. It's not going to work because this impacts the strategy, the relevance, the competitive position, and the regulatory exposure of financial companies. Experiment, very important. Yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes we might need to fail, but we learn, we develop, we grow forward, and we stay agile. Partner with technology. Why? Time to market. Yeah, don't invent the wheels. Like the wheels have already been invented. Yeah, your competitors are buying tech companies. They're not even partnering with them. So partnering with tech is extremely important because it significantly increases your chances of implementing these things quickly rather than doing them internally, which we all know is a pain and very costly today. Last but not least, I encourage everyone to evangelize, to talk about this topic, both within your company, out to the outside world, you know, start to custom message that this is something you guys are looking at. Why? Because a lot of the other industries already are, because that's what investors want to hear, because that's what your shareholders want to hear, and that's what your clients want to hear. This is the future, and this future is now. Therefore, you know, don't hesitate and effectively move forward with implementations. With that, I thank you for the attention. It was a very quick introduction to a topic that I could talk about for hours. So thank you. I hope you found this informative. I'm available for any questions. You can link me up on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect. Thank you.